Welcome back to The Arena, which is a tremendous show. Now, they've banned the burqa. I love the alliteration. They've banned the burqa in France. Paris has long guarded its secular identity, really, from 1789 until now. It's also highly centralised and, well, actually just a little bit racist. But this is a reaction to mass prayer in public, disrupting the street, an anti-French element within France. Now, Rachel Ryan is a columnist who lived in France, and she joins us from Washington, D.C. Welcome to you.
Hello.
Now, the French, I mean, you know, I'm from Britain originally. I have the right attitude towards the French, part love, part complete hatred. But I fully understand this. They're in a bit of panic, but they've banned the burqa, and now they're taking on public prayer. And we've seen public prayer disrupting large main streets in France. Have they done the right thing here?
Well, France has the largest Muslim population in Europe, and they're getting a lot of immigrants from North Africa, and there's a real problem with assimilation. And French citizens feel that their culture is being sidelined by the new influx of Muslim immigrants, but the Muslim immigrants aren't being assimilated as well as they'd obviously like to be. So they're overcompensating, or they're hosting public prayer services due to lack of prayer space and blocking sidewalks 5 times a day, announcing calls to prayer. So it's quite disruptive. They're
being very aggressive and ostentatious. I've lived in the Middle East. I've seen Muslims at prayer, and they're normally extremely courteous about this. They will make sure they're not disrupting, and part of their faith is to not disrupt. They're trying to make a point. It's triumphalism, isn't it?
Yes, and there's a huge contingent of Muslims that live in the northern end of the city, in the 9th arrondissement and in Montmartre, in that region. And I've got a friend that lives there, and he attested that, you know, there'll be times when he's walking down the street and he won't be able to get through because whole sidewalks and blocks will be blocked off. So, yeah, it's definitely disruptive and definitely something that needed to be addressed by the government.
And if there's any attempt to walk through, it can result and has resulted in violence. Now, there is this culture camp, I suppose, this war between culture. The French have always had an issue. They had an issue with French Protestants, with Huguenots, to a degree with Jews in France. There's always been a certain ambivalence. So it could be argued from the Muslim point of view, you won't let us be French. Is there anything to that argument?
There are elements of racism, certainly, in France against Muslim immigrants, against Africans that come, whether or not they're Muslim. A lot of the immigrants live in the banlieue, which are the areas around Paris, which are much more dangerous, and so there's definitely an element of their being stigmatized over there.
Yeah. However, racism is what it is, and most newcomers have faced it. And in France, there have been waves of immigrants. The original immigrants after the Algerian crisis did not behave like this. Jews coming to France didn't. Even Muslims in the UK, there are some emerging problems, and in Canada, but they don't behave like this. So who is going to win this one? Muslims still will wear the burqa, they will pray in public. Will the police enforce the law?
The police are trying to enforce the law, but there's only so much they can do. For instance, the hijab is also banned on public university campuses. And when I was in school out there, I saw a lot of people wearing the hijab. And I asked one of the girls, you know, isn't there a threat of arrest for you wearing this in a public university? And she said, yeah, but nobody's going to do anything. So there's an element of enforcement there that's lacking as well.
Well, that's the worst of all worlds. I mean, you're better off not having a law than having a law that you don't enforce. You're inviting anarchy and contempt for state power.
Right, and once the banning for public street prayers was issued, there was a huge rally in the north of the city where tons of Muslims came, and this is right after the ban was issued, and there was a huge protest prayer essentially organized. So.
Now, some of the wider context, of course, look, I think if say, Hindus or Buddhists were indulging in mass prayer, there'd be limited reaction. But we had a guy who was kidnapped and tortured to death in France. We've had endless violence, street protests. And it wasn't about poverty. Religion was an obvious dynamic in this. There is a lot of problems between the Islamic community and the non-Islamic community, including poor non-Muslims. Black Africans who are Christian are facing problems too.
Right.
So, I mean, when I think of 4 million Muslims in a country of, what is France, 60 million people or something? And a growing minority. It sounds extremely worrying about what the next 10 years will bring.
Yes, it's very worrisome. What is for certain is that in 40 years, France is not going to be the France that it is today. It's changing with the influx of immigrants. The face of Europe is changing. But there needs to be some way to assimilate these people because they're definitely feeling stigmatized. But
hold on. What do you mean? What do you mean by assimilation? Look, someone doesn't have to be assimilated. You can be whatever religion you want to be. Be a Jedi Knight. I don't care. But you don't break the law. You don't spread Jew hatred. You don't spread misogyny. You obey the law.
Yes.
It's not about assimilation. It's about being a citizen.
And France has a very strong tradition of laïcité, which is separation of church and state, and you have to respect that. You can't wear ostentatious religious paraphernalia in public universities. I'm Catholic, or I was raised Catholic. I can't wear a big cross technically. So it's about respecting the tradition of laïcité in France.
But you see, again, I mean, this is a country that is Catholic by origin, by foundation, and we see this in other countries now. In Canada, in Ontario, we've just had a government report, or a government paper that's gone around telling people in public service to be sensitive during Ramadan. Now, apparently, Muslim countries can invade Israel during Yom Kippur. They can kill each other during Ramadan, but we have to be sensitive. We're not asked to be sensitive during Rosh Hashanah or during Christmas or Easter, but during Ramadan. This is a ridiculous double standard.
Yes, definitely. And there really isn't a double standard with respect to the law of laïcité in France. Like I said, you can't wear ostentatious religious paraphernalia. You can't wear yarmulkes, technically, in public universities. So it's about respecting that for every religion and hosting public street prayers that take up whole blocks. That's certainly ostentatious and disruptive and not in line with the French values and traditions of laïcité.
I want a prediction from you here. Next time there is, and people can Google this, there's a lot of it. Next time there is a big public Islamic prayer, and there'll be probably 500 people blocking an entire street. Will the French riot police go in there, as they have done with other people, and remove them and say you are breaking the law? Will that happen?
Well, one would hope it would happen, because if this law isn't enforced, then, as you said before, what's the point of having it? But it's really the police weren't able to affect it. Well, they broke it up eventually, but the initial street prayer that was held in protest of the passing of the law was quite large and definitely posed a problem for the authorities.
Yeah, it's not about praying to God. It's about saying we're better than you. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.